Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's kind of a hypocrite. Let me explain why. You see, I spend a lot of time talking about English language hegemony on this channel. I talk about how terrible it is. I talk about how it's a sort of weird privilege that English speakers have that they don't always recognize, that we need to fight against it and embrace not just other cultures, but other languages. We can't simply live our life in translation. We have to also make the effort to learn languages. I am a language teacher. I teach French. I've seen what's been happening in high schools and colleges. Enrollment in language classes is going down. America is becoming more and more monolingual, and we need to fight it. So I fight it by talking about French music and African music and Serbian music. But I'm kind of a hypocrite because I've very rarely talked about music in Spanish. K-pop, sure. Now, it's not that I have anything against Spanish. I speak Spanish at, I would say, intermediate low level. I've taken multiple classes. If I'm in a Spanish environment, I can read everything, I can understand almost everything, and I can speak like a confused 7-year-old. But still, it's not that I'm against the language. It is probably that as a French teacher, often the languages are put into competition, and Spanish is just so much more successful. I feel a little bit of competition. I'm not quite sure. So that's one reason that I'm a hypocrite, and I'm trying to address that now by reviewing the album Verano sin ti by Bad Bunny. Another way I'm a hypocrite is I've been talking about what's the album of the summer, what's the song of the summer, and I've not discussed this album. Just last week I talked about Cardi B and I talked about Charlie XCX, and I've talked about Drake and about the house thing, but let's not forget, Bad Bunny, Un Verano sin ti, A Summer Without You is directly about the summer. It was released in late May. The cover features a beach. I'll get to that soon. So this actually probably this is the actual album of the summer, but you might not know it because maybe you don't listen to it because you don't speak Spanish. And I sound like I'm being critical of you. I'm not. It's our culture. Much like we have to get over our inherent racism, our inherent prejudices, our inherent homophobia, whatever it is, we have to get over our inherent embracing of the imperial power of the English language. So I missed this album when it came out. I usually only review things within a week or two. But I had recently reviewed the album by Rosalía. And so in my imperialist American mind, I thought, check, I have understood reggaeton. I am done now. Now, that Rosalía album is great. It's wonderful. It's a very, very good album. And it's a very good example of reggaeton. But it is a little bit elevated. She is trying to mix genres. She is Spanish and not from the Caribbean, so she's not exactly where it comes from. Lots of questions of appropriation there. To say that, she is my one understanding of reggaeton, that's just not good. That's a bad instinct on my part. That'd be like someone saying, I remember growing up and people telling me the only hip-hop group I like is the Beastie Boys because they play their own instruments. Check Your Head's a great album. It's a great hip-hop album. But it can't be the only hip-hop album that you know, right? So Bad Bunny is a great chance for me because I don't know much about reggaeton. I just don't. I've recognized that it has grown in importance. I've recognized hearing the sounds everywhere. But Rosalía was the first time that I ever actually tried to understand it on any level. Now, I'm going to summarize this one thing, because maybe you're like me and you don't know anything about reggaeton and you're watching this because you're curious to hear what I'll say. In which case, seriously, thank you. That's a big honor that you would take me seriously enough to allow me to introduce you to reggaeton. But the backbeat of it is the beat, is the dembow rhythm, which comes from a Shabba Ranks song, a very weirdly homophobic song, which I'll get into probably on a video some other day, in which the traditional dance hall rhythm of doom doom cat was changed to doom cat doom cat doom cat doom cat doom cat doom cat. That small change was adopted all over the Caribbean. Some say it was first in Panama, some say it was first in Dominican Republic. I think some say first it was in Puerto Rico. But in general, all the way throughout all of the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, they adopted this rhythm that came from Jamaica and made their own kind of music. And along with this, it mixed in some traditional Spanish-speaking Caribbean music, some traditional reggae, some hip-hop. It all just kind of came together. And based on what little research I've done, some of, if not the most popular groups or most popular reggaeton musicians come from Puerto Rico. Now, I've never been to Puerto Rico. I've had several students from Puerto Rico. My wife is good friends with a Puerto Ricana. But it's bizarre. It's bizarre that Americans know so unbelievably little about Puerto Rico. I'm going to ask you a question. And you should know this answer. If you don't know this answer, exactly, you are a failure as an American. How many Puerto Rican immigrants live in the United States? I'm going to give you a second. Put in the comments your best guess. I'm not going to give you within 100 or within 1,000. I want you to get the number precise. How many Puerto Rican immigrants live in the United States? 0. They're citizens. They're American citizens. Okay? 54% of Americans don't know that. And I'm convinced that they asked that question like in New York City or someplace where there's a high Puerto Rican population, because most Americans don't know that. I didn't know that until way too late in my life. And I'm a worldly guy. Okay? They are citizens. 6 million Puerto Ricans live in the United States proper. 3 million live in the island of Puerto Rico. And we really should be paying attention. We really should. It is incumbent upon us. Now, I took it upon myself to try to understand K-pop. And I've reviewed, I think, 3 K-pop albums now, maybe just 2. But it's part of the zeitgeist. It's part of what's happening. If we're going to be music listeners, we can't just listen to everything that is in our Q zone. We have to listen to things that we might not be familiar with. And in particular, to get to know reggaeton, there are 60 million Hispanic people in our country, in the United States. That's a huge population. And one thing is, okay, so they're not all Puerto Ricans. They're not all Dominicans. They're not all whatever, Mexican, right? They're not, right? But they all speak Spanish, right? Or at least their heritage comes from a Spanish-speaking country. And as such, this victory of reggaeton represents a victory for all of them. Now, I understand that if you're Mexican, you don't think, oh, great, reggaeton is my people, right? There isn't necessarily a crossover between those. But this huge prevalence of this rhythm, of this sound, of this language in the pop landscape is good for the entire Spanish-speaking population of America. Because it is forcing dum-dums like me and people who turn on 107.8 KISS FM and listen to music and they have to go, ugh, what's this? Why are they talking all funny? That's it. And I'll give you a perfect example from yesterday. Yesterday, I went out to Gates, New York, which is an interesting town, sort of in between Rochester and Buffalo. And my brother works out there. I was buying some lavender for our garden. There's a good garden center out there. And there's a great drum store, Cadence Drums. That's where I buy all my drums. It's like, great, go there. And right next to it is this restaurant, Pura Vida Ville. Now, if you know anything about Costa Rica, Pura Vida, that's basically synonymous with Costa Rica. So this is not a Puerto Rican restaurant. It's a restaurant run by Costa Ricans. And, I'm sitting there and it's the best tacos that I've had in Rochester. I understand that that doesn't necessarily line up culturally, that Costa Ricans would make great tacos, but I don't know what to tell you. I lived in California for 10 years. I fiend for good tacos. They had chicharron tacos. Do you understand? The pork belly tacos, the good things. And they had so many leaves of cilantro and chopped up onions. Totally decent. A great taco. Okay? And what music were they playing? I didn't know. I didn't understand any of it. But all of it had that damn boom, boom, gap, boom, boom, gap, boom, boom. So it was all reggaeton. Until eventually I heard... I was like, Bad Bunny. It's Bad Bunny. I know who that is because I'm doing this review. So here I am in this place, and the cultures are all mixed up, right? Obviously, like eating a taco in a Costa Rican restaurant while a Puerto Rican is playing is not exactly a cohesive cultural message. But it is a reminder of several things. Of the richness that our American, it was July 4th yesterday, and I didn't celebrate it, or 2 days ago, because I'm so upset at our country. But the things that I do like about our country are the diversity that comes from immigration and from having people in the part of our country that doesn't get a vote, Puerto Rico. By the way, 3 million people live in Puerto Rico. 1.25 million people live in North and South Dakota combined. North and South Dakota have 4 senators. Puerto Rico has 0. Interesting. You may also note in the background that I put paper towels. That's a sign of the insult that our former president, after Hurricane Maria went down, and when Puerto Rico needed help, needed aid, he threw paper towels into the audience to help them with a hurricane. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Okay. So now that I've kind of basically scaffolded this whole idea of why you don't have to like Bad Bunny, okay? You don't. I actually do. I ended up liking it. But I think you have to understand it. Or Jay Blavin, even though he's not from Puerto Rico, whatever. Like whatever it is actually, I think, your responsibility to understand reggaeton enough to recognize some of its players, to be able to understand the sound, because this is a part of world culture, and thankfully, it's a part of American culture. All right? And Verano sin ti is more a piece of American culture than that Drake album. That Drake album's Canadian. Okay? So, but because I don't know much about Bad Bunny, I never listened to his previous albums before, I don't know where he came from, I've just been learning here. I put on Instagram that I'm going to be reviewing this. And I'm going to share some of the comments that I got from my followers on Instagram. I put it in the description if you want to follow me on Instagram. It's cool. I just like having a lot of Instagram followers because it impresses my kids. That's the only reason I like having Instagram followers. Eric Raj said, a mediocre artist with talented producers. Okay. Luck Oler 2 says, poor lyricism, cringe. So this is a funny thing. When I read the translations, some of these lyrics are very cringy. But I don't know. Maybe it's just a translation. Matthew Ticino says, a Peruvian friend put him onto it. Again, a Peruvian friend, okay? I mean, Peru and Puerto Rico, these are not connected. They're linguistically connected, but it's not like, I suppose they're colonially connected, right? But there's not. He says the vibes are immaculate, which I would agree with. The vibes are immaculate. Kali Kiba says it's an interesting album for being our first summer back from COVID, which is true. Excellent features and his best beat choices. Hugo27 said that he's overplayed in Spain. Now this is what's I love this. I love it. I love it. I love that American hip-hop is played in England. And I love that Puerto Rican music is played in Spain. It's beautiful. It's beautiful that in this colonial history, and no American has any right to act like they're above colonialism. We are just as colonial as any other empire, just in different ways. But the fact that this music from the colonies that gets all mixed up with this other stuff and mixed up with Jamaican rhythms and then goes back, and now Spain has a Puerto Rican musician being played all the time on their radio. Now, my first impressions of the album, I liked it a lot. I mean, what I liked about it was El Drake. That was the feeling I got. I got the sense that this is a Drake-ish like character. And I find Drake's character interesting. I find it tiresome because he's around so much, but just independently, I liked the idea, like, he came across, and this is me understanding about half the lyrics, maybe less, because a lot of it's Puerto Rican slang, a lot of it's said very quickly, but very kind of confident, personal, very sexual, very into drugs, but like able to change his style very easily, very personal, at times very frail and vulnerable. So that nice mixture that Drake has of like, I'm the greatest guy in the world, and also, why did you break up with me? You know, like that mixture. Like, I got that sense from this music. I also like his sort of trademark that helped me to figure out that I was listening to Bad Bunny while I was eating those chicharrones. And he has like a real rhythmic mastery of his voice. And this is something which, I don't know, I might end up doing a video essay about this at some point. But there's something that hip hop has done where singers today have such a good control over rhythm. And I don't think it was ever this good before. Like, there's like because of the way hip hop has dominated everywhere, and because of the way that sometimes like the drum beat takes a back seat, like in trap music, or sometimes the way that vocals have to form the rhythm. You know, it makes me think of how like they say that like an average NBA star now would be the greatest player of all time if you had him play 30 years ago, just because of the athleticism. You know, just it's a different level of athleticism now and training and all that. I think that might be true as far as like the rhythmic capacity of singers. Like the ability to create and maintain rhythm through the way that you're singing. We're in a golden age of that. And you really hear that with Bad Bunny, who's able to like sing and talk and rap and do everything. Such a variety of approach, such a variety of style. This album's long, 23 tracks, but it's not like bad that it's long. It's good that it's long, because only once or twice did I sort of get tired of it, but there's enough variance in the style, enough variance in the tempos, that it has that vibe feeling. And I think the vibe feeling really is attached to that cover, the cover which is a heart that's frowning with one eyeball, in the middle sort of paradise with the sun and the sand and palm trees. This idea of being sad in paradise appears to be very much like a theme of the album, that the paradise is where he lives and he's sad because he's without this woman. And it's what I understand about these lyrics. Like, he's talking about being famous and having lots of sex, but he's also talking about being broken up and really missing somebody. Very kind of interesting mixture. Again, very Drakey in a good way. When I actually read the lyrics all the way through, I was a smidge disappointed. I was sort of thinking, maybe this entire thing is a story. Like, maybe because I looked at the song titles and it seemed like it had a certain kind of flow, maybe this is going to be one story. It's not, but that's okay. I don't know how many different words there are for horny, but after reading the translations, it makes me think that he's the kind of guy, Bad Bunny, the kind of guy who drives around in a car and the bumper sticker says honk if you're horny. It just kind of has that feeling to it. Very sad about himself. He seems to constantly be wanting these unwinnable women and then constantly betting these very winnable women. Very summer themed, lots of beach, ocean, waves, the summer without you. Now I'm going to get into my favorite track of the album, and it's not even close. This is not only one of my favorite tracks of the album, it's one of my favorite tracks of the year, El Apagón, the Blackout. I'll include a link to it up here. Click on the banana if you want to hear it. Okay? Now, before reading the lyrics, it was my favorite song. After reading the lyrics, I liked it even more. Now, musically, it's the most restrained because it has kind of a reggaeton beat, but it's mostly just like this, just kind of has this like very like simple tom sound. And it's really just his voice that's doing most of the work. It starts off with a sample from Ismael Mayelo Rivero, the god of Puerto Rican salsa. I rolled the R's too hard there. And because of this, I then went on a tangent yesterday. I was going to record this video yesterday, but I got into listening to Ismael Rivera and his salsa, and it's just great. And he's this great god of Puerto Rican salsa. So this song is the most very directly pro-Puerto Rican song. And it starts right off with Puerto Rico está bien cabrón. Cabrón, right? Just over and over and over again. Cabrón, which is sort of like a swear word and sort of not. It seems to be a word that means a lot of things. But basically like is effing badass, essentially is the idea. But just the way these lyrics, Puerto Rico es cabrón. Just awesome. Probably his best rapping here, very subtle style. He talks about the reggaeton from Carolina, which is a part of Puerto Rico. He then talks about potholes, and he talks about blackouts. That's the name of the song, El Apagón, blackouts. And again, much like the paper towels behind me, this is a failure. Puerto Rico is being failed by the American government. It's not getting the resources that it needs. It's not getting recognition that it needs. It's not getting the administrative recognition that it needs. Okay, some of the citizens don't have to pay taxes. Okay, but that's still not the same thing. It's this bizarre holdover from the Spanish-American War, which itself was contrived by a newspaper man. Very weird stories here. But I really like here how he just gives me a whole lesson. He gives me a lesson on Puerto Rico. All right? I didn't know most of these names. I'm sitting there, I'm looking up these names. Land of Maelo, which is that singer, and Diego Calderon. So now I'd look up Diego Calderon, who's a reggaeton guy, but also a hip-hop guy. He has this awesome song that uses the James Bond theme as a sample, Alegría. And then he has another song, Abeyerde, which is based on a sample from Cab Calloway, Minnie the Moocher. Cab Calloway, one of Rochester's best musicians. Interesting. He talks about someone named Barrea, who is a basketball player, and just kind of all these things mixed in. And it's like this celebration of Puerto Rico, while also a subtle commentary on the imperial failings of the United States. And then there's a weird break, sort of out of nowhere. Huge instrumental, like, weird interlude where it becomes like techno with like this drop, basically a house beat. And then over and over again, Me gusta la chocha de Puerto Rico. Chocha is a word that you shouldn't use in polite company. It refers to female genitalia. It's a great word to say, though, right? I mean, of all the words for genitalia, like, usually they don't have that kind of power. Chocha, you know? It's a great word. It's a good thing I'm not more popular. Most people be making memes of me going, chocha. But yeah, you know, like, so it gets kind of silly. So like he's constantly mixing together this kind of serious message with this kind of silly stuff, and then it comes back with a chorus of people. Puerto Rico está muy cabrón, just cabrón, cabrón, over and over again. And then there's this outro by Gabriela Befinier. I don't know how to say the name. Just a sweet voice, and it becomes full house music outro. This is the summer of house. Beyonce tells us, Drake tells us, and now Bad Bunny tells us. This beautiful outro, esta es mi playa, esta es mi sol, esta es mi tierra, esta soy yo. So, you know, this is my beach, this is my land, my land, this is my earth, this is me. So talking about the land being me, actually being Puerto Rico. This sense of connection. A beautiful song, very well produced, the most forward-thinking production. It's great. It is a great, great song. And if you've never heard anything by Bad Bunny, listen to that song. You won't be disappointed. I'm going to go through the rest of the album a lot quicker than that. Opens up with a track called Moscow Mule. Gentle, kind of auto-tuned, some seagull sounds here. Then the reggaeton. Boom, ka-boom, 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 ka. Sort of a sad, you don't write me, I don't write you lyrics. But then mixed up. It's like your booty will rip the jeans and gets horny while you're drinking. Honk if you're horny. Wants a girl who doesn't care about him. Next song is called Después de la Playa, After the Beach. I understood all those words. Odd, like futuristic sounds in the beginning, very cool. A very rough beat change halfway through. It becomes like a mamba, but it seems almost like it's done with resignation. Like it's a very weird and jarring change. Those cringe lyrics maybe are lyrics like this. We'll get wet again, but in my bed. I'll give you a surfboard. So subtle. Me porto benito, I'll be nice. More kind of sad sounds, a little more auto-tune here, a very kind of low reggaeton beat in the back. And then it hits harder, and when it hits harder, we have our first guest appearance by Chencho Corleone. Don't know if he's related to Michael or Fredo Corleone. Maybe Fredo Corleone like had a bastard child in Cuba who like fled to Puerto Rico. I don't know. I'm now really getting into this little fiction I've written in my head. I love this other guy, this Corleone. He's great as his high voice. It is great. All the guest appearances on this album work great as counterpoints to his voice. You know, too often people just get whoever they can to go with them, but instead it's these different voices that have different sounds. Almost an unsettling voice here. Another outro beat change, even more unsettling. The smell of your perfume is lingering inside the truck. You're horny, I'm horny, that's what unites us. Honk if you're horny. I'm telling you. Friday night. Titi Me Pregunto. It's a real highlight of the album. Sort of like in the way that like there's that one rap song on the Drake album, the very last track with 21 Savage. This is sort of like that in this album. It doesn't quite fit stylistically, but it's so good. Kind of trap rap. I basically understood every word of the song. Even though I didn't understand all the words, I understood what it meant. I understood Titi immediately meant aunt. I understood that me pregunto means asked me, and it makes sense. Just this idea of like his aunt asking him to be a good boy, to be a smart guy who, why don't you have a girlfriend? He says, I have a girlfriend. I have one today, I'll have one tomorrow. He says all over the world. He does a whole Mambo number 5 list of all the different girls and women that he has and all the different countries where they're from and all that. But it's fun because it's not fun, but it's interesting because it's mixed in with a sense of family disappointment. And then the bridge that he wants to fall in love, but he just can't. El Drake, right? A great repetitive oh part. It's cool to hear his aunt's voice on the phone. And then we get the very sad ending where he talks about how he's bored, and that's the reason that he does everything, is because he's bored. It's a great song. That's my second favorite song on the album. Have a listen to it if you want to hear like a great example of rapping in Spanish with this reggaeton sensibility. Un ratito, another mournful sound about a breakup. A little uninspired, just sad about being alone, but I do like the quiet part at the end. Yo no soy celoso is a bossa nova song. With this guitar, a nice clean guitar. It's very nice, especially with the clean guitar mixes in with this first I have a couple theories about language and music, that certain words, because they sound beautiful in a language, get used more, and that actually determines the direction of the poetry. So recently I've realized that in Serbo-Croatian, the word for year is godine. And godine just has a power to it compared to year in French. I mean in English, or an in English, and in French, or año in Spanish, which is way too close to ano. So if you know what that means, you might be almost laughing. It's not that funny. The word in Spanish for heart, corazón, is just like the best word in any language. So I used to laugh because when I was teaching myself Spanish, by mostly listening to radioromantica.com in LA, when I lived in LA, I would just listen to the Radio Romantica all day, and every single song had a certain part where someone would go, corazón. So I always associate any music in Spanish with that word because the word is 3 syllables, and it means heart, emotion, feeling, corazón. That word is the greatest gift to a poet and to a singer you could possibly have. So this is, I think, the only time I hear the word corazón on the album. Makes sense, it's going on this bossa nova rhythm where he's whistling. Beautiful, delicate part where there's like this piano and he's playing on the snare rim. Reminds me a little bit of how that song I like, El Apagón, develops, where the drummer starts playing on the rim of the snare as well. If you're on my Patreon, you can watch me as I learn what celoso means. For some reason, I didn't know what that word means, and I made a whole bunch of guesses and filmed myself. I thought it meant stable, but it doesn't. It just means jealous. Oops. It's a funny video if you want to check it out. Of my 64 Patreons, none of them have watched it yet. So you could be the first. But then it makes sense, that it's like, I am not jealous, but obviously he is. Who's this guy? He talks about sniffing cocaine, and his heart and his mind are tangled. And he says, I get jealous for no reason, and that's sexism. Hey, that's good that he recognizes that usually jealousy is just a form of sexism and control. Taro featuring Jahey Cortez is a sweet reggaeton song. This other guy's voice, again, plays really well. And when Bunny comes in, it's great. Because this other guy's so sweet. And Bad Bunny is a lot of things, but he's not sweet. Like, his voice is always a little bit tough. And lyrics are just about being lucky to be with a very hot woman. Neverita has a cool, like, detuned sounding guitar. Seriously, the production's all over the place on this album. Like, it never sounds like they're trying to do too much different. But if you actually, like, listen to each song and just pay attention to the differences, they're all quite there. A very simple 1-2 rhythm here, not but just sort of boom, boom, and then kind of trappy in the chorus. Neverita means like a small refrigerator. I looked up somewhere that said it also means disgusted in some Spanish-speaking countries. Do you know? ¿Puede me decir si Neverita quiere decir disgusted? También? But I like this song because, again, it's another one of his heartbreak songs where this woman is, she just wants to be alone for the summer, but then he sees her and she always has somebody. He's kind of a simp. That term I don't like using because it's like every other term that's ever invented. It's mostly sexist. But he has that kind of, it's funny because he goes between being like Mr. Lothario to like, I'll do whatever you'll say. Why? Let me spread sunblock on you. Déjame untarte el sunblock, pa. Like, he's literally saying, like, I will put sunblock on you. And then he just sees her with all these other guys. Like, it's almost like incel stuff, which is funny because he's actually like, Mr. Lover guy, right? La Corriente with Tony Diz, another Puerto Rican rap artist, reggaeton artist, even tougher. So here's like a tougher guy with him. At this point, I was tired of the reggaeton beat. I was sick of it. But then I wasn't. I was at the gym. I was watching the Formula One race, where my man Leclerc was in the lead. And then Sainz passed him. It's very upsetting. And then a couple other cars passed him as well. It's okay. I actually really like Formula One. It's a weird thing that people probably don't predict about me, but I do. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching Formula One and I'm on the elliptical, and then I just realized I get into this. Like talking about bailando to dance. I'm just sitting there and I'm listening to these voices interact and I love it. Boom, ka-boom, ka, boom, ka-boom, ka. And I'm sitting there and Hamilton is trying to pass. There's this exciting moment. Like it's a very good, energetic thing. Effecto takes you way down. Very sad sounding auto tune. I like the way the synthesizer sounds here. I like the post-chorus, esta no, esta si, this sort of like weird quote from some other song. It's kind of a standard love is a drug song. Here's these cheesy, cringe lyrics, but your chocha is a disgrace to me. I am a fan of that chocha. Mwah, mwah. Besides the picky, the Xanax, the coke, and the songs, you're the one that controls me. I love the list. Like, besides all these other things, you're the one that controls me. I like the kind of futuristic sound here. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. The futuristic sound is on the next song, Party, with Raúl Alejandro, who I think is still dating Rosalia, so I know him a little bit. I like the futuristic sound here. There's this weird female voice being used as a percussive element in the back. According to Lyric Genius, it's saying party, but I don't hear party. But it's a nice interaction between them. Aguacero is another subdued song. It sounds like there's like rain, there's like an organ, and it feels like it's this really solemn song. I hear the word church, I hear the word to marry, you know. And then I read the translation, and it's all about wanting that ass. So, honk if you're horny. I'm telling you. Okay. Enséñame a bailar. Teach me to dance. I like the guitar bits in here. It's a real dance song. And I like it because he's saying, teach me how to dance. And there's an implied vulnerability here. Much like Drake, he's very good at just going in between vulnerable and impenetrable. Ojitos lindos, beautiful eyes. Has Bomba Estero, who is this like female vocalist. And her voice is so beautiful. And I realized I really like the way a female voice interacts with the eh. I mean, okay, so I was introduced to Bad Bunny by I Like It off the Cardi B album from a couple of years ago. But that's not quite the same thing, right? Because she wasn't singing in a beautiful high register. I really like here how talking about like tu y yo. Yeah, that means you and me, but I heard it as tu hijo, which is your son. So in my mind, this was like a song between basically a baby mama and her baby daddy, and her trying to get him to appreciate how beautiful their son is. So I had a whole song this wasn't about at all. I wrote an entire narrative. I wrote an entire song that does not exist because I heard tu hijo as opposed to tu y yo, which is why you need to practice your Spanish. Practice your language. Don't just let it go. 2016, more kind of sad sounds, kind of a trap beat in the back. The lyrics really help it pop. It turns out this is like him talking about the way his life was in 2016. And according to what I read, he was a grocery bagger at a supermarket. So he was just listening to Drake and vaping, and that's what his life was like. Then we have El Apagón, the stamp, Otra Atardecer. I don't have... Oh, I like the other voices in the background, but that's all I said about this song. So I'm going to keep moving. Un Coco is the most actual dancehall sounding song. I really like the dynamics of this mid-tempo. Andrea has a weird baby voice in it. Nice break, kind of intimate sounding love song at times. I really like the repetitive parts, and I love the vibe of the bridge. A very kind of wild soundscape, kind of atmospheric. Me fui de vacaciones starts off with an organ. Another one of these songs has a little bit more of a religious feeling, maybe. And then it becomes a reggae song. Not dance hall, but actual reggae rhythm. Ba, 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 ba. The original reggae rhythm, as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the thing that is most lost in the transition from reggae to dance hall to reggaeton is the bass. So when bass is played well on reggae, it's the best sound. And the bass on this song is just so great. This is maybe the best kind of pop song here. A good steel drum solo as well. Steel drums in general are not my favorite thing, although my brother and his family learned how to play steel drums together as a family event, which is cute as hell. Damn it, smash the like bucket. 38 minutes in, and I forgot to ask you to smash the like bucket and subscribe. Sky, you're never going to get the 50K if you don't ask people to do these things. They don't do them on their own. They don't do them just because you say chocha on screen. Damn it. Okay, smash the like bucket, would you? Un Verano sin ti. The title track, kind of ominous, slow sounds. This whole back... Like the last couple songs in the album are very kind of slow, restrained, a slight rap part. Again, his voice is doing so much of the rhythms. Sorry for being me. That could have also be a title of the album. Sorry for being me and not being the man you deserved. And now it's a summer without you, and I'm having a good time. I won't lie to you, but sometimes your name won't let me sleep. Hey, what's the guy's name again? What was the name of the guy who said the lyrics were cringe? Luck Older too. You know, that's a good line. Sometimes your name won't let me sleep. It's poetic. It's not I'm horny, you're horny, and your booty's gonna break those jeans. It's good. Agosto goes back to reggaeton, but a little bit more nuanced, a little more jaunty than the straight dembow rhythm. Maybe you can tell me if this is actually some other variation that I don't know about. Singing about sexo and playa, sex and the beach. I'm sort of done at this point, but it's the second last track of the album, and it's a good song. He does a different trick with his rhyming cadence here, where he kind of overpronounces his last words. This is maybe my favorite rap verse besides the ones on Tito Me Pregunto. It has the ocean sound here as the album gets towards the end. There's ocean sounds. You have the song Caeta, produced by Tiny, who's the same guy who produced I Like It. So a lot of the reason that reggaeton has had, reggaeton stars have had more exposure to a more mainstream non-Hispanophone audience is because of his production. Gentle sounds again. I like these last songs, kind of slow, breaks into sort of a mid-tempo reggaeton beat, singing about smoking and drinking, but sort of trying to get over the sadness of a summer without you, whoever you is. So there it is. I really enjoyed this experience. I enjoyed trying to figure out like what a real reggaeton album is, not just what is a artsy interpretation of alternative reggaeton, which Rosalia does, and that album's great too. It's not one or the other, but I'm very happy for that. These are my Patreons, the Patreons who just have not watched that video of me thinking Celoso meant something else. But thanks anyways to all these folks. Let's see if I can get this to... There you go. I got a new one here called Support Basic Science Research, which I think I'm going to do a video on my other channel about misunderstandings about science research. Because my wife is a scientist, and I thought it was way different than it was. So that could be a fun video. Okay. Until next time, there's the camera.